Jai Guruji Sangat ji. Last week, Guruji made us read a wonderful, beautiful book, The Laws of the Spirit World. Though the book, just came to an end, but the lessons we learned were endless. And still, Guruji made us read so, in such an engrossing way that the lingering effect is still going on. And I still haven't come out of that, form, because it was such a beautiful experience. And I'm sure Sangat also must have had a lot of divine experiences. So it was really, beautiful and fascinating to be able to read that book. And now that Guruji wants us to read this another beautiful book, that's Living with the Himalayan Masters. And when I read this book, I guess many years ago, though I've read it just twice, and this will be the third time, with Sangat I'll be reading. And as I was just reading, I got so much engrossed, because I've always been very fond of Himalayan masters, because Himalayan masters क्या होते हैं ना, selflessly वहां पर पाठ कर रहे हैं और selflessly pray कर रहे हैं कि दुनिया टिकी रहे. And they have no other demands. They don't even want that people should acknowledge them, because they just want to keep their identity hidden. So with Guruji's agya, and taking agya from all the Himalayan masters and from Swami Ramaji, we just pray to your spirit to bless us. And above all, yes, they all, be it Swami Ramaji or be it Himalayan masters, they all pray to one light, and that's our Guruji. So this book, it has 14 chapters, but all the chapters have beautiful stories, very heartfelt stories. And not taking much time, I'll be starting with the introduction, which is given by the Pandit Rajmani Tigunet. Actually, he's the successor of, Swami Ramaji, and he's also the spiritual head of the Himalayan Institute, which was, founded by Swamiji himself. And, this Pandit Rajmani Tigunet, he's also touched innumerable lives around the world. He's also a very big humanitarian and visionary spiritual leader. And in 1976, Swami Ramaji, ordained Pandit Tigunet into this lineage of the Himalayan masters. And he's also penned down lots and lots of books. So here we'll start. What he writes, about his master, it's like an ode, to his master, like a preface. Now Pandit Rajmani Tigunet says, Sri Swami Rama took me under his wing in 1976. And from that time on, every minute of the 20 years I lived with him was a time of learning. Now that he is no longer in his physical body, I look back and realize how skillfully he filled my every breath with the living presence of the masters, who were such an integral part of his own life. In continuous waves, he nourished my heart, nourished my mind and heart with the perennial knowledge and love of the lineage of the sages. So further he says, today, with awe and gratitude, I ask myself, after having him as my master, is there anything yet to be achieved? Just see, he's so much filled with his master's love. कहते वो जो मेरी जिंदगी में मास्टर बन के आए, क्या कुछ और रह गया अचीव करने के लिए? तो इसी तरह हमारी लाइफ में जब गुरुजी आए हैं, अब और क्या अचीव करना? कुछ भी नहीं. He's given us so much. So even we can resonate with the same idea. Is there anything yet to be achieved now that we have got Guruji in our life? One of the most blessed and richest periods of my life was in 1985, when, at Swamiji's behest, I began to translate Living with the Himalayan Masters into Hindi. तो वो स्वामी जी के साथ रह के हिमालयन मास्टर्स को हिंदी में जैसे ट्रांसलेट कर रहे थे, my native language. Every evening when I showed him that day's translation, Swamiji told me the untold part of the story, and I soon realized he was using the translation as an excuse for me to glimpse the inner life of the sages he had written about and to absorb their teachings. तो वो कहते हैं, ये तो उनके humbleness से कहते हैं, ट्रांसलेशन का तो बहाना था। तो स्वामी जी तो मुझे उन चीजों के बारे में भी बताना चाहते थे डिटेल में, जो इस किताब में शायद उनका कोई वर्णन नहीं है। Every episode brought a revelation which I was able to assimilate only through the grace of Sri Swamiji and the masters who speak through this book. So now you understand the importance of this book. Yes, all the masters gonna speak through us through this book, and we are fortunate to be able to read, and we are fortunate, that this, our beloved Ektajins, Shilpi ji, have started this podcast, and we all are just reading under one roof. Living with the Himalayan masters is the embodiment of Swamiji's life, his spiritual journey, and his experiences with the masters of different traditions. इस बुक में स्वामी जी की लाइफ के बारे में तो हमें पता चलेगा ही, और स्वामी जी की जो क्वेस्ट थी उस दौरान वो कितने कितने स्पिरिचुअल मास्टर से मिले, और हमें भी उनको मिलने का मौका मिलेगा हिमालयन मास्टर से, सभी से। He addresses the issue that all of us confront at least once in a lifetime, and shares his experiences in such a simple and loving manner that they become a part of us. At the mundane level, this book shows us who we are and what steps we must take to be happy and successful. It inspires us to work hard and have faith in our own self-effort. At the spiritual level, it introduces us to our own mystical and esoteric self as we encounter the adepts hidden in the caves and monasteries of the Himalayas and the remote parts of India, Tibet, Nepal, Sikkim, and Bhutan. I don't know how you would react, but whenever I would see the monasteries and Himalayas, it would just give such a nostalgic feeling कि पता नहीं शायद कभी ना कभी तो किसी जन्म में शायद आत्मा वहां भी रहकर आई होगी. It provides so much of warmth actually. Spiritual books, especially those of an autobiographical nature, often give the impression that the experiences and spiritual achievements of the masters are beyond our reach. Swamiji, however, puts miracles and mysticism in an entirely different light. Reading it, we feel that he is one of us. और ये सच में जैसे 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 आप जर्नी आगे देखेंगे ना स्वामी जी की, शुरू में वो थोड़े वो भी रहे हैं, मिस्टीवियस भी रहे हैं, like a footloose and carefree adolescent, तो हमें लगता है कि नहीं, वो हम सब में से एक ही तो है वो. He is a young boy full of mischief. He's a teenager full of curiosity and adventurous zeal. He's a seeker with certain strengths and weaknesses, just like us. He sometimes fails to distinguish the fakes from the genuine masters, mistaking magic for the spiritual achievement. So वो होता ना उस young age पे you get enamored when you see someone performing magic or some kind of other magical things and tantric vidyas and all. तो वो भी enamored हो जाते थे. At one time, for example, attracted by the magical power and glamorous life of sorcerers and low-grade tantrics, he even considers abandoning his master for another teacher. His human traits are so familiar to us that in reading about them, his journey becomes our journey. तो सिर्फ ये उनकी जर्नी नहीं है, वो अपनी जर्नी में हमें भी साथ में शामिल करेंगे और ऐसे लगेगा कि ये तो हम जी रहे हैं सब कुछ. The stories in this book infuse our hearts with overwhelming gratitude for the sages who selflessly shared their boundless love and yet remain unrecognized by the multitude. Swamiji is one of them. जब गुरुजी सत्संग करवाते हैं तो कई बार ये भी कहलवाते हैं कि पता नहीं कितने हिमालयन मास्टर्स की तपस्या और प्रार्थना होगी कि गुरुजी को धरती पर आना पड़ा, क्योंकि ये हिमालयन मास्टर्स की भक्ति है, वो सिर्फ दुनिया के लिए सेल्फलेसली लोगों के लिए प्रार्थना करते हैं. उसके अभी तो ऐसे हिमालयन मास्टर के केव्स में होंगे और पता नहीं कितने कितने वर्षों से होंगे जिनको पता भी नहीं होगा किसी को उनके बारे में, because they like to stay hidden. Swamiji is one of them. While he lived among us, he lectured, wrote books, and established large charitable organizations, but very few of us perceived his spiritual stature. In the last phase of his life, those who were near to him had eyes to see came to know that Swamiji was master of every esoteric practice he mentions in this book, but they never knew how and when he practiced them. Swamiji discouraged a belief in miracles, yet every moment of his life was filled with miracles. No one who came near him ever went away empty-handed. His gifts were of different shapes, sizes, and weights. Upon touching his feet, a businessman might be blessed with prosperity, a sick man with health, and a student with knowledge. Some understood what they had received, others did not. Now I look back and wonder at how beautifully he unveiled the spiritual mysteries while skillfully hiding his identity as one of the greatest sages from the Himalayan peaks. Swami Rama was fully established in his own self-nature, a playful child, a carefree adolescent, a gentle sage, a tactful adult, spontaneously manifested in him. For him, past and future did not exist. He always lived in the present. So, we should also live in the present, because future is like, we'll get really worried if you think about future and past. Now we must bury the past because past is gone. The past just gives us, kind of, it just gives us kind of depression, and we get, of course, when you have gone through really, really bad phase of life. And this, okay, he always lived in the present, and the circumstance of the moment called forth whatever persona would help and guide those who were with him. Transformative energy emanated from him. If he stayed for a time in a rocky, barren land, a beautiful rock garden would emerge. Just imagine इनकी vibration जो sages की जो Himalayan master कितने उच्च कोटि के होंगे. कहते हैं अगर rocky barren land में भी हो जाना तो वो भी एक garden में emerge हो जाता है. He stopped to speak to a woman suffering from chronic depression. Her face would light up and the years would drop away. To Swamiji, nothing was useless. Everything had purpose and meaning. He once put rocks and pebbles around an odd-looking septic vent pipe and artfully placed a few stumps around it. The resulting sculpture looked like a holy man sitting in meditation, and visitors kept a respectful distance. तो मतलब जैसे स्वामी जी के लिए तो हर चीज का मीनिंग है. जो चीज किसी नई भी यूज में स्वामी जी ऐसे रखते थे कि कोई ना कोई शेप ले लेती थी. He was very fond of cactus. He had a huge collection in India and a smaller one in the States. One day I asked him, तो ये जो राजमणि चुगानेट है उनसे पूछते हैं स्वामी जी से, स्वामी जी, why do you love cactus so much? He said, just see how beautiful he's gonna answer. I am in the habit of tending those who are full of thorns and are discarded by everybody. It gives me a great joy when I see them blossom. I'm going to repeat again. Swamiji says, I am in the habit of tending those who are full of thorns and are discarded by everybody. It gives me a great joy when I see them blossom. I remember my own life. Before 1976, I was like a speck of dust drifting along the roadside. Then one day, Swamiji picked me up and transformed me into a living pollen. With his loving touch, I became an integral part of that garden which the sages cultivate. Today, I have been given the honor and privilege of writing an introduction to this classic work, but I hope you will understand that my attempt to do is that my attempt to do so is like a flower's attempt to describe the gardener and his work which far exceeds the flower's understanding. What I received directly from Swamiji and what I learned about him by visiting places where he did his sadhana, however, gives me the confidence to say that the stories in this book represent only the tip of the iceberg. Living with the Himalayan masters has its own spirit. I have read and pondered over it countless times, and each time I have found something new, something that was just what I needed at that level of my development. The book speaks to each reader at the personal level. I must not try to tell you what I think it is about, because by doing so, I might put a veil between you and its message. In these pages, you will experience Swamiji's presence and the presence of other great masters. तो ये किताब नहीं है, इसमें स्वामी जी की प्रेजेंस है और भी जितने मास्टर्स हैं उनकी प्रेजेंस है. May you bask in their grace and receive just what you need. तो देखिए उन्होंने स्वामी जी के बारे में कितनी वो बात प्यारी बताई. वो कहते हैं कि स्वामी जी आप कैक्टस क्यों रखते हैं, आप इसको क्यों प्यार करते हैं? स्वामी जी कहते हैं मैं उन्हीं के लिए तो हूँ जिनको कांटे लगे हैं, जिनको और दुनिया छोड़ देती है. फिर मैं जब देखता हूँ ये खिलते हैं. ऐसी थिंकिंग सिर्फ स्पिरिचुअल मास्टर्स और इतने बड़े बड़े हिमालयन सेंट्स की हो सकती है, नहीं तो आम बंदा कहता है कैक्टस क्या रखना, इससे तो इट्स लाइक इनऑस्पिशियस। पर इनकी थिंकिंग बहुत बहुत डिफरेंट होती है। जैसे ये पंडित राजमा चुगनेट भी तो कहते हैं मैं था क्या, आई वाज जस्ट अ स्पेक ऑफ डस्ट ड्रिफ्टिंग अलोंग द रोड साइड, स्वामी जी ने तो मुझे उठाया और मुझे इतना प्यारा ब्लॉसम करवा दिया, लाइक इनटू इनटू लिविंग पॉलन। और कहते हैं स्वामी जी के बारे में बताना तो ऐसा होगा कि फूल, कोई गार्डनर को डिस्क्राइब कर सकता है उसके काम को, क्योंकि फूल नहीं कर पाएगा, गार्डनर तो कितना कुछ करता है गार्डन में। तो फूल की तो मतलब सिर्फ अपनी तरफ अपने तक की सीमित होगी ना उसकी ब्यूटी। इट्स ब्यूटीफुल द वे ही पेन डाउन for his master, the introduction note. And now I'm going to read, it's Swamiji's handwritten note, his gratitude, it's like a benediction, his gratitude for his spiritual masters. And Swamiji has a beautiful calligraphic, handwriting. It's so beautiful. Now he says, at thy lotus feet, this is not my life, but the gift of experiences which I gathered from the sages of the Himalayas and from thee, my beloved master. One lovely evening, it seemed to me as if a ray of light all of a sudden broke through the mist, and I wonder what it might mean. The same evening, thou gave me a glimpse of love, of the love divine, and then I heard his name uttered from thy lips, shedding a new light over my destiny in the dark chamber of my heart, and the lamp was lit, which always goes on burning like the lamp on the altar. Who has, like them, mingled the strains of joy and sorrow into the song of my life, enabling me to realize the joy that sits still on the lotus of pains and the joy that throws everything it has upon the dust and knows not a word. To those who understand thy message, there shall be no fear left on the earth. Therefore, today, the flower of undying gratitude offers it petals at thy lotus feet, Swami Rama. So this is how he, signs it. And now we're going to read the first chapter. It's written after the first page. Yeah. Spiritual education in the Himalayas. कहते जो childhood है ना, childhood is the foundation stone upon which stands the whole life structure. The seed sown in the childhood blossoms into the tree of life. The education which is imparted in childhood is more important than the education which is received in colleges and universities. In the process of human growth, proper guidance along with environmental learning is important. ये तो बिल्कुल है, देखिए, children are like wet clay or wet, cement. Whatever falls on them, it makes an impression. As they're quick learners, they imbibe things very quickly. So our education system is quietly different. The education system वही सही होता है जो बच्चे को holistic development पे, उसके overall development और spiritual development की तरफ भी बहुत सोचता है. Now the first chapter is the sacred Himalayas. देखो इस chapters के through हमें पता चलेगा Himalayas क्या है. Personally जो नहीं गए हैं, I have never been, but वो fondness होती है Himalayas की. और इस पे स्वामी जी मेटिकुलसली बताएंगे, क्योंकि वो more than, I think he stayed for about 45 years in Himalayas. So he knows each and everything कि Himalayas कैसे हैं and how beautifully he has explained. So we're going to start. कहते the Himalayan ranges extend over almost 1,500 miles in length. Mount Everest, towering upward over 29,000 feet on the border of Nepal and Tibet, is the highest of all the mountains in the world. Persians, Indians, Tibetans, and Chinese have all written about the grandeur and beauty of these mountains. The word Himalaya comes from Sanskrit words Hima, means snow, and Alya, meaning home, the home of snows. I would like to make you aware that the Himalayas are not merely the home of snow, but that they have also been a stronghold of yogic wisdom and spirituality for millions of peoples, regardless of their religious beliefs. The ancient and rich tradition still exists there today, as these unique mountains continue to whisper their spiritual glory to all who have an ear to hear. कहते वो तो अपनी spiritual glory, they are at their work, they are whispering. बस आपको उस तरह अपने कान लाने हैं उसको सुनने के लिए. फिर स्वामी जी क्या बोलते हैं? I was born and brought up in the valleys of the Himalayas. I roamed among them for more than 4.5 decades and was educated by their sages. I met the masters who live and travel there, studied at their feet, and experienced their spiritual wisdom. From the Punjab Himalayas to the Kumaon and Garhwal Himalayas, from Nepal to Assam, and from Sikkim to Bhutan and Tibet, I traveled to those forbidden places which are virtually inaccessible to tourists. I climbed to a height of 19,000 to 20,000 feet without the help of an oxygen kit or modern equipment. Many times I did not have food and became unconscious, tired, and sometimes wounded, but always one way or another I found help during such occasions. To just see, Swamiji's like ordeals, किस तरह से 19,000 और 20,000 फीट पर वो ऑक्सीजन किट के बगैर चलते रहे और कई बार बेहोश भी हो जाते थे बीच में, खाना भी नहीं कई बार मिलता था, उनके वुंड्स हो जाते थे, but he kept on going on. I found help during such occasions. For me, the Himalayas are my spiritual parents, and living there was living like in the lap of nature. She brought me up in a natural environment and inspired me to live a particular style of life. Once when I was 14 years old, an unknown sage blessed me. कहते जब मैं 14 साल का था ना, तो मुझे एक sage मिले जिनको मैं जानता नहीं था. He gave me a leaf of Bhojpatra. I met an unknown sage who blessed me and gave me a leaf of Bhojpatra, the paper made of bark on which the ancient scriptures were written. On it he inscribed, "Let the world be little with you." तो कितने अच्छा उनको संदेशा मिला, "Let the world be little with you." दुनिया गुरुजी बताइए कहते हैं ना, दुनिया च रह के दुनिया के ऊपर रहना सीखो. और स्वामी जी तो है भी, वो स्पिरिचुअल मास्टर रहे, तो उनको जैसे उन्होंने भोजपत्र पे ये लिखा, मुख मोड़ जगत से हो अक्सर अध्यात्म पथ पर. That means let the world be little with you. Let you be on the path of spirituality. It is still, Swami ji कहते हैं, it is still in my possession. The love I received from the sages is like the perennial snows which form the silvery glaciers of the Himalayas and then melt into the thousands of streams. When love became the lord of my life, I became quite fearless and traveled from one cave to another, crossing streams and mountain passes surrounded by snow blanketed peaks. In all conditions, I was cheerful, searching for the hidden sages who preferred to remain unknown. कुछ भी मुश्किलें आए, स्वामी जी हमेशा cheerful ही रहे, क्योंकि उनमें वो जो प्यास थी कि नहीं, मुझे उन hidden sages से मिलना है. Every breath of my life was enriched with spiritual experiences, which may be difficult for many others to comprehend. That gentle and amiable sage of the Himalayas had only one entrancing theme: love for nature, love for creatures, and love for the whole. The Himalayan sages taught me the gospel of nature. Then I started listening to the music coming from the blooming flowers, from the songs of the birds, and even the smallest blade of grass and the thorn of the bush. In everything lives the evidence of the beautiful. If one does not learn to listen to the music of nature and appreciate her beauty, then that which impels man to seek love at its fountain may be lost in the remotest antiquity. Do you need psychological analysis to discover in nature the source of so much happiness, of so many songs, dreams, and beauties? The gospel of nature speaks its parables from the glacial streams, the valleys laden with lilies, the forests covered with flowers, and the light of the stars. This gospel reveals the emphatic knowledge through which one learns truth and beholds the good in all its majesty and glory. That shows Swamiji loves nature so much. Which one learns to hear the music of nature and appreciate her beauty, then soul moves in harmony. कहते अगर आप appreciate करोगे ना nature की beauty, your soul moves in harmony with its entire environment. His every movement and every sound will surely then find its due place in human society. The mind of man should be trained to love nature before he looks to the corridor of his life. Then a revelation comes peeping through with the dawn. The pain and miseries of life disappear with the darkness and the mist when the sun rises. Mortality finds its way in the awareness of immortality, that a mortal being suffers no more from the pangs and sorrows which death seems to shower upon him. वो कहते हैं death has for ages been a constant source of misery, but at death man learns to become one with the infinite and the eternal. डेथ तो है ही ऐसी है ना, इट्स लाइक अ कांस्टेंट सोर्स ऑफ मिस्ट्री। और हमारी लॉज ऑफ स्पिरिट वर्ल्ड में तो हमें डेथ से भी जो फियर था ना वो बिल्कुल निकाल दिया, बिल्कुल निकाल दिया। कहते डेथ है क्या, you should be happy that you're gonna be one with the infinite and the eternal. You know, just a transition. It's only body dies, soul doesn't. Okay, when one learns to appreciate fully the profundity of nature in its simplicity, then thoughts flow spontaneously in response to the appeals of his delicate senses when they come in contact with nature. Swami ji कहते हैं, the soul vibrating experience in its full harmony with the perfect orchestra of melodies and echoes reflects from the sound of the ripples of the Ganges, the gushing of the winds, the rustling of the leaves, and the roar of thundering clouds. The light of the self is revealed and all the obstacles are removed. He ascends the top of the mountain. When he perceives the vast horizon, in the depth of a silence is the hidden source of love. कहते हैं, in the depth of silence is the hidden source of love. That is why Guruji always stays silent most of the time. The eye of faith alone can unveil and see the illumination of that love. This music resounds in my ears and has become the song of my life. The discovery of the sages binds the whole of humanity in the harmony of the cosmos. Sages are the sources from which mankind receives knowledge and wisdom to behold the light, truth, and beauty which show the path of freedom and happiness to all. They make humanity aware of the mere shadows and vain illusions of this world. With their eyes, the unity of the entire universe is best seen. कहते हैं, the truth is hidden by a golden disc. Oh Lord, help us in unveiling so that we can see the truth. The gospel of love, as taught by the Himalayan sages, makes the whole universe aware of the fountainhead of light, life, and beauty. अब स्वामी जी कुछ उसके बारे में बताएंगे। आगे कहते हैं, at a young age I sat at the foot of Mount Kailas and drank the glacial waters of Lake Mansarovar. Often I cooked the vegetables and roots grown by Mother Nature at Gangotri and Kedarnath. Living in the Himalayan caves was very pleasant. And when I was there, I was in the habit of roaming through the mountains during the day and taking notes in a haphazard manner and returning to my cave before darkness would fall. ये जो नोट्स स्वामी जी उस टाइम लेते रहे तो इतना मतलब इतना अच्छा किया उन्होंने, तभी तो ये किताब आई. Okay. My diary is filled with descriptions of my experiences with the sages, yogis, and the other spiritual leaders of the Himalayas. कहते हैं, this is a land where Sandhya Bhasha was born. Several modern scholars have tried to interpret and translate Sandhya Bhasha by calling it the twilight language. Actually, the way I was taught this language is entirely different from the concept the modern writers have of it. It is purely a yogic language spoken by only a few fortunate yogis, sages, and adepts. Philosophically and ideally, it is very similar to Sanskrit, for every word of Sandhya Bhasha flows full of meaning from its root sound. इसको जो रूट का साउंड है उसमें से ये भाषा बोली जाती है, जैसे उसका भी जिस तरह से भी उनका मतलब होता है. संध्या भाषा can be used only for discussion of spiritual matters and contains no vocabulary for the business affairs of the world. When the sun weds with the moon, when the day weds with the night, and when Ida and Pingala, the left and right energy channels of the human body, equally flow, that union is called Sandhya or Sushmana. Sushmana is the mother from whose womb was born the language Sandhya Bhasha or twilight. During that period of Sushmana, the yogi derives the greatest joy that anyone can consciously experience. When such a yogi speaks with other adepts, then they converse in this language, which is hard for others to understand. The knowledge is the appropriate way of chanting the Vedic verses and is slowly diminishing because the grammar of the Vedas is different from the Sanskrit language. The grammar of the Vedas is called Nirukta. Similarly, the grammar of Sandhya Bhasha is completely based on sounds and is diminishing. As the musicians of classical music can make notes from the sounds and the pitches, so the notes can be made from the sounds used in Sandhya Bhasha. It is called the language of devas and gods. When one sits in the morning, in the evening on the tops of the mountains, he can see beauty all around. If he is a spiritual man, he can understand how this beauty is an inseparable aspect of the Lord, whose attributes are Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram, truth, eternity, and beauty. This is the land of Devas. In the Himalayas, dawn, Usha, and twilight, Sandhya, when the day weds the night, are not mere moments created by the rotation of the earth. कहते ये मत सोचो ये सिर्फ एक साइंटिफिक मोमेंट्स जो रोटेशन ऑफ अर्थ जैसे भी हम बात करते वो हैं. कहते एक्चुअली ये तब होता है when day weds the night. It has a symbolic meaning. कहते morning, afternoon, evening, and night each have their own beauty, which no language can describe. Many times a day, the mountains change their colors because the sun is at the service of these mountains. देखो किस तरह स्वामी जी बताते हैं, कहते जो sun है ना, सूरज, वो भी इन mountains की service पे बैठे हैं. You know, many times, many times a day that mountains change their colors because the sun is at the service of these mountains. In the morning they are silvery, क्योंकि सूरज की ऐसी किरणें पड़ती हैं, सुबह वो सिल्वर के नजर आते हैं. At noon they are golden, and in the evening they look red. The Swami ji कहते हैं, I thought that my own mother was dressing to please me in my different colored sari. So इस तरह प्यार से माउंटेन को डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं. कहते जब सूरज की किरणें पड़ती हैं, सुबह वो सिल्वर के लगते हैं, आफ्टरनून में गोल्डन सुनहरे रंग के, और शाम को बिल्कुल जैसे लाल साड़ी पहने होती है. कहते मतलब ऐसे लगता है कि मेरी मदर नेचर बार बार डिफरेंट तरह की साड़ियां बदल रही है. So he's got beautiful expression to, describe nature. Do I have vocabulary to explain this beauty through the language of the lips? It's only the language of the heart in which I can speak, but the words do not roll down through my lips. I can give you only a glimpse of these beautiful mountains. Their beauty is splendid and beyond description. The morning environment in the Himalayas is so calm and serene that it leads an aspirant spontaneously to silence. That is why the people of Himalayas become meditators. Nature strengthened the schools of meditation. The Swamiji कहते हैं, when I lived in my cave, Usha, dawn, holding the rising sun in her palm. देखो कैसे describe करते हैं, कहते Usha, dawn, holding the rising sun in her palm would awaken me every morning as though my mother was standing before me. The rays of the sun penetrated gently through the entrance. In the cave there lived several yogis studying the wisdom of the Upanishads at the feet of the master. In the evening when the weather clears and the sun breaks through the clouds, it seems as though the mighty painter were pouring out millions of colors on the snowy peaks, creating paintings which would never be duplicated by the brushes and the colors of the tiny fingers of artists. तो वो शाम का सीन डिस्क्राइब करते हैं, कहते कोई जितना मर्जी बड़ा पेंटर या आर्टिस्ट हो, वो उस तरह की पेंटिंग बना ही नहीं सकता जो आप पर्सनली एक्सपीरियंस कर सकते हो. कहते any art that exists in Tibet, China, India and Persia has some influence of the Himalayan beauty on it. At few times I too try to paint, but I stopped using my brushes because my painting seemed to be mere scribbles drawn by a child. Beauty remains bound within the limitation of human realms if it is not appreciated heartily. कहते वो ब्यूटी ना वो तो फिर लिमिटेड ही रह जाती है अगर आप दिल से उसको अप्रिशिएट नहीं करोगे. When one becomes aware of the higher level of beauty which projects itself through nature, he becomes a true artist. When an artist becomes aware of that fountain from which arises all beauty, then instead of painting, he starts composing poems. The brush and colors do not have access to that finest level of consciousness. Spiritual beauty needs to be expressed on increasingly deeper and more subtle levels. फिर कहते हैं, the most ancient travelers of the Himalayas are the clouds, which roll gently from the Bay of Bengal, rising from the ocean. These monsoon clouds travel toward the snowy peaks of the Himalayas, hug them. जैसे क्लाउड्स को कैसे उन्होंने डिस्क्राइब किया है कि किस तरह से रोल करते करते ऐसे करते हैं जैसे लगता है माउंटेन्स को हग कर रहे हैं, and return roaring to the plains laden with pure snowy waters. They shower their blessings and bestow them upon the soil of India. फिर वो कहते हैं जैसे कालिदास जी, कितने बड़े वो पोइट हुए हैं. Kalidas, a great Sanskrit poet known as the Shakespeare of the East, composed many poems about these clouds. कहते हैं Meghdut is a solitary example of an excellent collection of these poems. In these poems, Kalidas used the clouds as messengers to deliver his message to his beloved who was captive in the Himalayas. The Ramayana and Mahabharata, famous Indian epics, are full of phrases describing pilgrimages to the Himalayas. Even modern poets of Hindi and Urdu like Prasad and Iqbal could not resist composing poems on Himalayan beauty. तो हिमालयन ब्यूटी इट्स कोई चाहे हिमालयन अपने माउंटेन्स हो, चाहे उधर के कोई भी नज़ारे हो, कोई पोम जो नेचर को करता है ना प्यार, वो तो जरूर उनका रेफरेंस देते हैं अपने उसमें, अपने पोम्स में या अपनी कहानियों में या अपने जिस तरह से भी वो जो भी कहानियां जो भी पोम्स बनाते हैं. Many Sanskrit poems such as Mahimna Stotra are sung as though a traveler were going up and coming down from the Himalayas. I also used to compose poems and sing, although I was not a good poet and a singer. The classical music of India borrowed ragas like Pahari from the melodious tunes sung by the girls from the tops of the mountains. The Himalayas remain replete with mysteries for poets, artists, musicians, and travelers, but they reveal their most important message only to those who are prepared. Mystics alone can unveil the real secrets of these wondrous mountains. फिर स्वामी जी कहते हैं, I used to roam in mountains with my pet bear. एक उन्होंने भालू पाला था. With my pet bear, who was very loyal to me. He was fond of me and, he became very possessive. He wouldn't hurt anyone, but would knock down anyone who came near me. I called him Bhola. And he was my finest company during those days. कहते स्वामी जी कहते for 11 years, good 11 years, he lived near my cave and would always wait for me to come out. My master did not approve of my growing attachment to this pet and used to tease me, calling me a bear charmer. In the morning, carrying a long staff to help me in climbing, I would go to the mountain tops, which were 4 to 6 miles from my cave. I had my diary, a few pencils, and the bear Bhola with me. After the 15th of September, it starts snowing in the Himalayas. कहते 15 सितंबर के बाद हिमालयस में बारिश होनी शुरू हो जाती है. Himalayas, but I continued my long walks to the nearby mountain top, singing the hymns of the Divine Mother. Occasionally, the thought would flash in my mind that my life belongs to those who follow our tradition. I didn't care for my individuality, but was acutely conscious of the tradition of sages which I followed, even though I broke the discipline many times and became rebellious. तो स्वामी जी अपने बारे में कहते हैं, मैंने तो कितनी बारी डिसिप्लिन तोड़ा और इतना रिबेल भी किया. I became rebellious. I was still forgiven. During those days, many profound psychological and spiritual experiences occurred. Sometimes I felt like a king, but without any burden of the crown on my head. Not having human company or communication brought me great peace and serenity. तो फिर स्वामी जी आगे कहते हैं, I realized that nature is very peaceful. बहुत सुंदर इन्होंने डिस्क्राइब किया जो हमने लॉज ऑफ स्पिरिट वर्ल्ड में भी पढ़ा था. शी डिस्टर्ब्स, कहते हैं नेचर इतनी पीसफुल है ना. शी डिस्टर्ब्स ओनली दोज who disturb themselves, but she teaches wisdom to those who admire and appreciate her beauty. This is especially true in the Himalayas. Nature आपको वही देगी जो आप उसको दोगे. कहते many varieties of flowers are found in abundance. अब कुछ उसके बारे में orchids हो गए, flowers हो गए, उसके बारे में स्वामी जी हमें बताने जा रहे हैं. कहते many varieties of flowers are found in abundance in these mountains. Those with a poetic imagination say that viewed from the snow-covered mountain peak, these slopes laden with flower beds look like a magnificent vase of flowers, which a fully prepared disciple would reverently present to his Gurudeva. I would sit next to this natural flower beds and gaze into the sky, searching for their gardener. कितनी सुंदर फ्लावर्स को देखे तो गार्डनर तो सोचा कि इनको सब पैदा करने वाला, इनका पोषण करने वाला कौन है? The biggest gardener, our God Almighty. कहते among all the flowers grown to the Himalayan valleys, the most beautiful are the lilies and the orchids. कहते hundreds of varieties of lilies bloom after winter is over and sometimes even before snowfall. There is one variety of lily which is pink and very beautiful. It grows in June and July at the height of 8,000 to 11,000 feet and is found on the banks of the river Rudra grove that joins the Ganges and Gangotri. The same variety of lily also grows under the trees at Bhojabas. फिर स्वामी जी कहते हैं, the orchids in the Himalayas are more gorgeous than any other flower. They grow at a height of 4,000 to 6,000 feet. The heaviest orchid that I ever found was growing on an oak tree and weighed a little less than 1.5 pounds. Some varieties of these orchids can be found in greenhouses a few miles from Kathmandu, Nepal, but many still remain undiscovered by horticulturists. During the blossoming season of orchids, the buds, in their natural obstinacy, delay blooming and sometimes take 6 to 7 days to open. Then he then he mentions orchid flowers are amazingly beautiful and their blooming season lasts for at least 2.5 months. फिर आगे स्वामी जी कहते हैं, the mountain cacti bloom suddenly in the moonlight night. They are shy to the sun's rays, and before the sun rises, their petals withdraw their blooming beauty, never to bloom again. I know of more than 25 varieties of succulents and cacti in the Himalayas, which are used for medicinal purposes. I was told that the Soma creeper comes from the succulent family and grows at the height of 11,000 to 18,000 feet. Among the great variety of flowers in the Himalayas, there are more than 115 varieties of rhododendron. I have to read slowly because it's quite a big name. Rhododendron. The most striking of this species is blue and white. Yet the pink and red varieties are common, and there is another variety which has multicolored petals. In the summer, sometimes an entire valley is laden with rhododendron flowers. अब स्वामी जी कहते हैं, वहां आपको पता है जो किंग ऑफ फ्लावर्स किसको माना जाता है? कहते हैं द किंग ऑफ ऑल द हिमालयन फ्लावर्स इज द himkamal or snow lotus, a very rare flower. कहते हैं one day I was wandering through the mountain. I saw a single blue himkamal as big as a saucer growing from between two rocks and half buried in snow. तो स्वामी जी को इतना प्यारा नीले रंग का हिमकमल मिला जो 2 रॉक्स के बीच में उग रहा था और आधा तो उसमें बेरी हुआ था स्नो में. कहते हैं I started looking at it and my mind entered into a dialogue with this beautiful snow lotus. I said, मैंने कहा, अरे why are you here alone? Your beauty is meant to be adored. You should give yourself to someone before your petals fall and return to the dust. अब देखिए वो जो फूल है ना, क्योंकि इतने बड़े मास्टर्स ही हैं जो अंदर से ऐसे नेचर से बात कर सकते हैं और कुदरत इनको जवाब भी देती है. तो स्वामी जी ने कहा, भाई ये तुम अकेले इधर क्या कर रहे हो? तुम्हारी ब्यूटी तो तभी फायदा है ना, तुम्हारी ब्यूटी का कोई तुम्हारी प्रशंसा करे. तो आगे क्या होता है? कहते हैं as the breeze blew its stem, it shook and then bent toward me. Just imagine, जैसे ही हवा चली और it shook and it bent toward me saying, do you think I'm lonely being all alone? You know, I've just highlighted and made a lot of stars with such beautiful, I have the habit of highlighting things and making stars so that when I read again, you know, I come to know that, you know, this is something which I have to really, really imbibe. कहते हैं flower क्या कहता है? Flower उनको कहते हैं, do you think I'm lonely being all alone? All alone means all in one. तो कभी भी जो अपने आप को अकेले देखो, लोनली बात और होती, कभी भी I don't think so. We are alone. You know, when Guruji is with us, we feel so replete. And alone means all in one. कहते हैं I enjoy a flower. हिमकमल क्या बोलते हैं आगे? कहते हैं I enjoy these heights, the purity, the shelter of the blue umbrella above. Just imagine sky को उन्होंने कैसे mention किया blue flower ने. The shelter of the blue umbrella above. I wanted to pick the flower and considered pulling it out. So Swami ji कहते हैं, I wanted to pick the flower and considered pulling it out and taking the whole plant to my master. I compared my own life to the lotus, and said like an irresponsible, joyous child, what will happen to you, you know, if I crush your petals? Lotus ने क्या बोला? The lotus replied, I will be glad, for my fragrance will radiate everywhere and the purpose of my life will be fulfilled. It is so beautiful. स्वामी जी जैसे उस टाइम तो दिखा रहे हैं ना, बिकॉज ही इज जस्ट गिविंग दिस वेरी कैंडिड डिस्क्रिप्शन। कहते मैं जैसे एक यंग बच्चा रिस्पॉन्सिबल होता है, अभी तू फूल को बोला मैं क्या कर लूंगा, तू क्या कर लेगा मगर मैं तेरे ये जो सारे पत्ते हैं उसको क्रश कर दूं। तो लोटस क्या बोलते हैं, कहते मुझे इतनी खुशी होगी ना, तो कम से कम मेरी जो खुशबू है हर जगह फैलेगी। और फूल का काम क्या होता है, यू नो वी शुड लर्न अ लेसन फ्रॉम अ लाइफ ऑफ फ्लावर। दे हैव अ वेरी शॉर्ट लाइफ बट दे लिव फॉर अदर्स। अपनी खुशबू बिखेरते हैं, महकते हैं, कुछ करके जाते हैं। तो गुरु जी तो कहते दुनिया जाए तो कुछ करके तो जाओ। Okay, I will be glad, for my fragrance will radiate everywhere, and the purpose of my life will be fulfilled. So Swami Ji कहते, I pulled the lotus out by its roots and took it to my master, but he was not very, appreciative. He had never liked to use flowers and the fragrance except on a few occasions when he instructed me to collect flowers from the forest for worship. That was the last day. Swami Ji कहते, that was the last day that I ever picked a flower. I felt that I had been depriving Mother Nature by snatching her child from her lap. I never picked a flower again. तो स्वामी जी कहते हैं ब्यूटी इज टू बी admired and not to be used, possessed or destroyed. Aesthetic sense develops when one starts appreciating the beauty of nature. तो कितना सुंदर उन्होंने वर्णन किया, कहते beauty is to be admired, not to be used, possessed or destroyed. To satisfy and fulfill my desire to be all alone, I wandered here and there, admiring nature just by being with her. Sometimes I would go down to the snowy streams and look at the ripples kicking each other as they move forward. The river and streams running from the tops of the glaciers looked like many long locks of hair. The music created by the streams is quite exhilarating. I would compare, बहुत अच्छा example देने लगे स्वामी जी, कहते I would compare the stream of life with these ever flowing streams and watch how a mass of water running toward the ocean would not leave a gap. The currents would never come back. वो पानी बहता ही जा रहा, बहता है, कोई गैप ही नहीं है। वो एक स्ट्रीम जब फ्लो होती है उसके साथ ही दूसरी आ जाती, कहते हैं ऐसी तो लाइफ है ना। But another mass of water would fill the gap. There was always continuity. Those streams are like the perennial flow of life. तो स्वामी जी लाइफ को कंपेयर करते हैं ना उस वाटरफॉल से जो कि बहती जा रही है, कहते ऐसे ही तो है जिंदगी भी, चलती रहती है। For hours I would watch the snowy streams flowing from the glaciers and waterfalls. Both banks of the streams glittered like silver on moonlight nights. Living in the part of the Himalayas where the Ganges flows, I would stay seated on its rocky banks and gaze at the blue sky and the clear moon, which paled its light on the sands. I watched the twinkling lights coming from the small homes of the distant villages, and when the clouds parted, I saw the sky glittering with the lamps of a million stars. तो stars lamps की तरह ही कहते नजर आते हैं. This grand assembly and long procession of the stars is beyond human imagination. Below on the earth, the peaks of the Himalayas silently enjoyed the fare of stars. Some of them seemed as though they were playing hide and seek among the mountain peaks. In all directions, the mountain peaks and snowy streams were illuminated with the milky light emanating from the starry multitude, which I remember even today. In the evening's mist, formed a thick white quilt over the Ganges between the two ridges of snowy peaks, and before sunrise, a layer of mist would cover the Ganges like a white blanket. It seemed as though a sleeping serpent were snoring from beneath it. The rays of the rising sun rushed to drink these holy waters as eagerly as I rushed to bathe in the Ganges every morning. The mountain water was crystal clear, soothing to the eyes and stimulating to the senses. There are many rivers that flow from the great lake Mansarovar at the foot of Mount Kailas, but all of the rivers which have their source in the Himalayas mountains, the Ganges is unique. जो गंगा माता जो नदी है सबसे unique है. कहते when the Ganges flows from its sources in the glaciers of Gangotri, it carries in its water a variety of minerals which have nutritional and therapeutic value. कहते skin diseases are rarely found among villagers who live on the banks of the Ganges. A bottle of Ganges water is kept in every home, and practically all of the villagers give it to a dying person to drink. ये तो बिल्कुल होता है कि गंगा माता का जो नीर है, जो पानी है, उसको इतना पवित्र माना जाता है कि जिसके प्राण निकलते हैं उसको भी वो पिलाया जाता है. When bottled, this water does not become stagnant. A bacteria do not survive in it, although they do in the water from other rivers. कहते हैं long ago, sailors learned that drinking water from Ganges carried by ships traveling from Calcutta to London did not stagnate, but water from the Thames carried by ships traveling from London to India had to be replaced by fresh water along the way. कहते the unique chemical components and minerals of this water have been analyzed by many scientists from all over the world. Dr. Jagdish Chandra Bose, a prominent Indian scientist, analyzed the Ganges water and concluded कहते there seems to be no other river water like this anywhere in the world. Its mineral qualities have powers to cure many diseases. जैसे कि हमें पता है, ये कथाओं में भी है कि कैसे शिव जी गंगा माता जी को धरती पे लेके आए, तो गंगा माता तो सबसे सबसे पवित्र माना जाता है, द मोस्ट पायस रिवर. और कहते हैं ना, इंसान उस तरह से गंदा हो चुका है कि गंगा माता को भी नहीं छोड़ा, उसमें क्या 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 they keep on immersing. When the Ganges comes down to the plains, however, it is fed by many polluted streams and rivers, and the merits of its water are lost. Some of the villagers throw the bodies of the deceased into the Ganges, believing that by doing so, the souls of the loved ones will go to heaven. Swamiji, personally, I don't approve of polluting water and then drinking the same water and calling it holy. I was instructed by my master not to drink from or bathe in the water of the Ganges with that idea that by doing so my sins would be washed off. ये तो है ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता कि आपने बहुत पाप कर लिए तो गंगा माता से आपको पापों की आपको शुद्धि मिल जाएगी. इस तरह स्वामी जी के मास्टर जी ने भी उनको बताया. कहते he taught me the philosophy of karma and said one has to reap the fruits of his karma. The law of karma is inevitable and is accepted by all the great philosophies of the world. As you sow, so shall you reap. Learn to perform your duties skillfully without aversion or attachment, and do not believe that everything can that anything can wash off your bad karma. Taking a bathe in a river and taking a bath in a river and making pilgrimages from one shrine to another will not free you from bondage of karma. Such belief is only superstition and has no logic. So definitely ऐसा नहीं है कि आप जगह जगह जाके आपके पाप खत्म हो जाएंगे या गंगा स्नान में खत्म हो जाएंगे. तो गुरु जी हैं, गुरु जी में शक्ति है जो हमारे पापों को भस्म कर देते हैं. The rivers flowing from the Himalayas enrich the soil of India and feed more than 600 million people today. Yet some call these mountains poor. Writers today say that Himalayas are economically disappointing, having few mineral deposits and being unable to support enterprises on a large scale. I agree with them. Economically, these mountains are not rich. They are spiritual mountains and provides for renunciates and not for the materially wealthy. Those who have tried to explore the riches of the Himalayas from an economic viewpoint have met with failure, and those who will undertake such ventures in the future will be similarly disappointed. कहते ये हिमालय ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको materialism या materialistic दौलत देगी, but spiritual दौलत बहुत ज्यादा है. Himalayan villages have not received the share of modern education, technology, and medicine, even though the Himalayas are the reservoirs for the drinking and irrigation waters for the whole of India. Indian planners are unwise in not placing greater emphasis on the important resource. However, the Himalayan inhabitants prefer things to remain as they are. Leave us alone. तो वो क्या कहते हैं वहां के जो रहते हैं, inhabitants? They said, leave us alone. Leave us alone without exploitation. Just be grateful and respect us from a distance, are the words I hear from many villages of the Himalayas. The economy of the villages is supported by the nearby tiny terrace fields where barley, wheat, and lentils are grown. Livestock include buffaloes, sheep, cattle, ponies, and goats. The villagers living in the Punjab and Kashmir Himalayas, in the Kumaun and Garhwal Himalayas, and in the Nepal and Sikkim Himalayas have many common characteristics. कहते they are poor but honest. अब उन लोगों के बारे में बता रहे हैं. कहते they are poor but honest. They do not steal or quarrel. In the villages high in the mountains, no one even locks his house. Locks are not needed. There are places for pilgrimage there. If you go to a shrine high in the mountains and drop your purse on the path, it will still be there when you come back a week later. कहते हैं आपका गलती से वहां पर्स भी गिर जाए ना, हफ्ते बाद में तो वही पाया जाएगा. बट आई एम श्योर धीरे धीरे वहां पर भी इस तरह की लोग होंगे जो probably जो शहर से इधर से जाते होंगे, तो उनके रंग में रंग के वहां चोरियां शुरू हो गई होंगी। कहते हैं no one will touch it. They consider it disrespectful to touch somebody else's things without permission. Why should we need someone else's things? They will ask. There is no greed, for their needs are few. They do not suffer from materialistic insanity. जब उनकी needs ही कहते हैं needs ही इतनी कम है तो उनको जरूरत क्या है इन चीजों में जाने की? The villagers are dependent on the plains only for salt and for oil to burn in their lamps. These village societies are less corrupt than most others in the world because of the people's simple, honest, and gentle habits. Yet in life there is calm and peaceful. The people don't know how to hate anyone. They don't understand hatred. उनको पता ही नहीं नफरत होती क्या है. These people don't want to come down to the plains. वो plains में आना ही नहीं चाहते. When they leave the mountains, they do not feel comfortable around the people of the plains with their many tricks and games and pretenses. In the mountain areas most influenced by modern culture, however, lying and stealing have begun to occur much more frequently. Yet the modern society is considered to be advanced and cultured, but it's not genuine. It's cultured. It is cultured like a cultured pearl. Few value genuine pearls today. The modern human being has weakened himself in his human nature by culturing it again and again, losing touch with nature and reality. And modern culture will live for showing off to others, not for serving others. This is so true. यदि आप सिर्फ शो ऑफ के लिए जी रहे हो, आपकी वो थोड़ी भावना है कि आप सर्व करो दिल से. But if you go to the mountains, no matter who you are, the first things they will ask you are, have you taken your food? Do you have a place to stay? Anybody there will ask you these things, whether you're a friend or stranger. कहते वो इतना ख्याल रखते हैं जब कोई आते हैं ना तो दो चीजें ही पूछते हैं, भी आपने खाना खाया, आपके पास जगह है रहने को, चाहे वो उनको जानते हो चाहे कोई स्ट्रेंजर हो. The people of Garhwal and Kumaon mountains are intelligent, cultural, and hospitable. Kangra Valley art and Garhwal art are renowned for their unique pen and color work. Education in some of these mountains communities is better than any other parts of India. The priests of the different communities know so much about astrology mingled with Tantrism that it sometimes surprises travelers from the plains. The people here lead simple lives close to nature. They live in beautiful wooden houses and weave their own clothes. In the evenings, they assemble for chanting and sing their folklore in beautiful melodies. They dance in a group and sing folk songs, which are harmonious and moving. The mountain drummers are excellent, and bamboo flutes and harps are used by the shepherds and school children. As the girls and boys go to the mountains to fetch grass for cattle and wood for fuel, they spontaneously compose and sing poems. The children have their own way of enjoying life by playing hockey and soccer. Reverence for parents and elders is one of the striking features of the Himalayan culture. Most of the trees which grow at heights of 4,000 to 6,000 feet are oaks, pines, and devadaru, trees of various kinds. In the highest mountains, Bhojpatra grows and supplies bark paper, which the villagers use to record their experiences, their ways of worship, and the usage of the herbs. Every villager knows something about herbs, which are useful for many purposes in daily life. All the villages from Kashmir to Punjab, Nepal, and Sikkim have a reputation for providing strong and healthy soldiers for the Indian army. The lifespan of the people is often over 100 years. The Himalayan community which lives in the mountains of the Pakistan is called Hunza. There they eat meat, but the community that lives in the Indian part of the Himalayas is called Hamsa and is vegetarian. Hamsa means swan. अब ये बड़ा अच्छा swan के बारे में बता रहे हैं. कहते हैं आपको पता है swan जो है इसका symbol क्या है in Indian mythology? कहते the swan is said to have the power of separating and drinking only the milk out of the mixture of milk and water. आप उसको जैसे वो दे दोगे ना मिक्सचर दूध और उसका जो पानी का जो भी है, उसको पता है कि दूध को कैसे निकालना है. Such a beautiful gift bestowed out by God. कहते similarly, इतना सुंदर समझाया. कहते इसी तरह ये जो आपकी दुनिया है ना, similarly this world is a mixture of two things, the good and the bad. अब wise बंदा क्या करेगा? The wise person selects and takes the good and leaves the bad. I think iske jo first chapter ke we're left with 2.5 pages, which I'll be reading tomorrow, and the first chapter will finish. It's beautiful. Himalayas का बहुत सुंदर glimpse दिया है स्वामी जी ने, और हमें ये भी पता लगा कि almost 45 years वो वहां रहे हैं. अभी उनकी शुरू होगी जर्नी, जैसे एक के बाद एक सेंट के पास जाएंगे वो, और उसमें उनका वो भी दिखाया जाएगा, चंचलपन दिखाया जाएगा, उस यंग एज का जो सभी में होता है, सो दैट वी कैन फील, दैट इज व्हाई वी विल बी एबल टू रिलेट टू दिस बुक। और इसमें यही बहुत बहुत अच्छी चीजें हैं, जैसे स्वॉन का एग्जाम्पल है, दुनिया में हमने भी देखना अच्छा बुरा सब होता है, पर अब हमने उसमें से क्या लेना है। और यही है कि जो ब्यूटी है, इट इज टू बी एडमायर्ड, नॉट टू बी यूज, पोजेस्ड और डिस्ट्रॉयड। और जो एक हमने और बहुत सुंदर जो हिमगिरी फ्लावर से चीज सीखी, alone means all in one. So beautiful, beautiful things, we have learned from this beautiful chapter. और यही सीखा ये भी कि in the depth of silence is the hidden source of love. और जैसे उनके जो भोज पत्र में उनके स्वामी जी ने मास्टर ने दिया, उसमें लिखा था, जो उनको एक सेज मिल गए थे रास्ते में, लेट द वर्ल्ड बी लिटिल विद यू। सो आई थिंक विद मोर profound lessons, आगे ये जर्नी कल को कंटिन्यू करेंगे। सॉरी द वे आई एम फॉर्मलिंग। सो थैंक यू एकता जी, शिल्पी जी, थैंक यू गुरु जी फॉर दिस ब्यूटीफुल ब्यूटीफुल बुक। और इसमें भी आपका कोई बहुत गहरा डीप मीनिंग है कि आप हमें क्यों हिमालयन मास्टर्स के बारे में पढ़ाना चाहते हैं। थैंक यू संगत जी, थैंक यू स्वामी रामा जी, थैंक यू ऑल द हिमालयन मास्टर्स, थैंक यू।
Thank you, Sonia ji, and thank you, Guruji, so much. Jai Guruji.